Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Today we're talking to Amy Watkins, Sustainability Manager for Agrii, and to Joe Farmer, who is Project Coordinator for the Green Tractor Recycling Scheme. So why is it important to recycle farm plastic waste? What is the aim of the new Green Tractor scheme? How does it work? And does this initiative help not only the environment, but your farm business too? So Amy, if I can start with you, why do we need to think about recycling farm plastic?
Well, I think recycling is an important point, not just at farming level, but also in people's lives day to day at home, as part of business as well. And more people are starting to become aware of recycling and also do it in their day to day lives. Obviously, where we have waste and it's almost impossible to avoid producing waste with what we do every day, this majority of this ends up in landfill, and this is causing us issues with things like the cost of getting rid of waste to go to landfill, greenhouse gas emissions as well, and also energy usage to actually get rid and manage that landfill site. So more and more people are becoming aware of ways to recycle. It's important to make sure that we're helping to reuse what we are wasting, and reduce that environmental impact of our waste.
And Joe, from your point of view, representing the Green Tractor scheme, a very exciting new initiative, why should we think about recycling our farm plastic?
Plastic, it gets quite a bad rep in the media. I mean, it is perceived, you see those photos all the time of, turtles with the ring around their neck or in their mouth. However, for me, plastic is a brilliant product. It's durable, it's cheap, and it's great in farming. I mean, it does a perfect job. But at the same time, it needs to be dealt with at the end of its life correctly. I mean, polluting the farm, contaminating the soil, obviously burning it, all these kind of things. It's all detrimental to not just one's own farm, but farming as a whole, the whole community. And so with that, you need to find better end uses for the plastic. And that's where recycling comes in. I mean, obviously, reduction is the first part of that triangle of waste management, but recycling where it's needed is what is paramount, really. And so it means that plastic that's being used by the farmer can then find another life, essentially, and be reused in other things. So, lots of different products get turned into things like silage wrap, for example. It can be turned back into refuse sacks and bin bags. And then, as I was at a festival last weekend, I saw a lot of bin bags around, and that was silage wrap that made them. So it's brilliant, really.
So tell us a little bit about the Green Tractor scheme. When was it launched, and what are its key aims?
So it was launched in 2020. So it seems a bit of a time ago because obviously of that COVID in between, but it was launched then. Actually, the businesses have all pretty much existed since 2004, really. This is when EU legislation came in telling farmers that they could no longer burn or bury their plastic. And so obviously more commercially minded individuals and entrepreneurials saw a gap and started these recycling businesses. This obviously had a positive trajectory and more material was ended up being recycled. But as the RAP report that came on behalf of DEFRA came out a few weeks ago, actually, showed that only 20 to 30% of material that's placed on market is ended up being recycled. So rather than, obviously, they are competitive businesses, but they thought, okay, there's 70, 80% of material out there. Instead of competing against each other, why don't we work together? They're all farmers as well. And from an almost altruistic point of view, let's increase that rate of recycling. So they got together to work together to increase that rate and get more farmers recycling. And then part of what we're doing is working with businesses like Agrii and Yara and other agricultural businesses, working with them to try and encourage their farmers and their suppliers and their customers to do the right thing and recycle.
Very interesting. And Joe, I read on your website that the aim of the Green Tractor scheme is to provide UK agriculture with the ability to recycle all farm plastics by 2030. How achievable is that?
So I think we're realists. I think, that's 7 years away. I think, I don't think we'll get to 100%. I think it's a bit like the target with all cars being electric, us all having electric cars by 2030. I think, the these are great ideas, and it's where we want to work towards. And good shouldn't be the opposite of perfect, but we need to try and get to it. I think it's about focusing on plastics that are very easy to get sorted right away. So say with like Agrii and Origin and Yara, they put fertilizer bags on the market. These are very readily recycled. We work with FPS Flexibles, who manufacture all the bags, pretty much nearly all the bags that are for the UK fertilizer companies. And they've opened 2 or 3 recycling sites for the bags. And so as collectors and working with Agrii and them, we're acting as a facilitator where the bags can be collected by us from farmers and then go to FPS where they can be recycled and turned back into something and to make new bags. And so it's things like that. You've then got other things like silage wrap and net wrap and more difficult things where they can be recycled, but the commercial element makes it harder for us to reach a total of 100% target. You know, there's lots of things at play here. It's not as simple as get right, the farmer needs to recycle it. It's, you know, commercial demands like the pellet produced from silage wrap. We said it makes bin bags and damp-proof membranes, but damp-proof membranes, there's no demand for it now because the construction industry is, you know, fallen by the wayside with the cost of living crisis, and this has a knock-on effect. So there's lots of different things at play.
And Amy, you know, thinking about what we're trying to achieve here, do you think we can achieve zero waste to landfill?
Well, that's certainly one of our targets, Tony, and we should all be working towards that to some extent. No matter what industry you are in, you should be trying to reduce how much you are sending to landfill and increasing how much you're recycling. Like Joe's already described, some things are more feasible than others, and you do have barriers along that journey as well. From our perspective, we've joined this scheme for many reasons that Joe's already described. That ambition of reaching 100% recycled plastic on farm by 2030 is fitting really nicely with what we're trying to achieve with zero waste to landfill. But we're also doing a lot as a business as well. So Agrii, all the waste, all the products that we put onto farm that we have a direct influence on, for example, our seed, we're trying to make all of the packaging for that 100% recyclable. And containing at least a minimum of 30% recycled material. So seed bags being a really good example there. The seed bags that we now put onto farms since probably 18 months ago or so now, all of those seed bags are 100% recyclable. So that should make it easier for that recycling process to occur. So us doing our own strategy is important, but of course, making that seed bag recyclable, it can then end up on farm, and what actually happens to it is kind of out of our control to some extent. That's up to what the farmer does with their waste, but we want to take more control of that by helping farmers understand the routes to recycling by joining the likes of the Green Tractor scheme, and also trying to financially support them and give them more knowledge on how to reach those expertise in the business as well.
And in recent podcasts, Amy, we've talked about Agrii's Green Horizons initiative and also about understanding the farm's carbon footprint and how we can reduce that. How does this fit in to that overall strategy?
Well, as mentioned earlier, if you are sending waste to landfill, that's obviously going to be naturally emitting greenhouse gas emissions as well, whether that be in the form of probably methane, but also carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, depending on the processes and what you've put into that landfill. So that will naturally be emitting as opposed to if you're recycling that. This is also part of our something that we term scope 3 emissions, which is essentially things that Agrii as a business doesn't have direct influence on, but where our products end up. So as an example, the products that we buy from manufacturers, ag chem manufacturers, how they produce that product, we don't have control of, but that sits on our emission spreadsheet. And similarly to what we put onto farm, those downstream emissions, so all of the seed, all of the chemical, all the fertilizers, and any other product that we put onto farm, how that's utilized will also sit on our balance sheet for emissions. And that also accounts for waste and packaging as well. So sitting within the whole supply chain emissions process, how waste is dealt with, whether it's recycled or sent to landfill, will have an impact on whether the farm's reaching net zero, but also whether businesses throughout the supply chain are reaching net zero as well.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And Joe, so tell us how this scheme works.
So it's very easy for the farmer. They were, interested. They want to learn how they want to recycle their farm plastic. They would type it into Google, just like any of us when we want to learn something. and they find the Green Tractor scheme. I mean, obviously, our site is a forum where all the collectors around the UK are listed there that are Green Tractor collectors. That they mean that they are certified to our standard, they've been audited, and that you know that the waste that you recycle with a Green Tractor collector is going to be recycled. There's a lot of businesses out there that are recycling or collecting waste, and it's actually not going to do that. It's not actually ending up, it's quite often going to landfill or ending up, in a forest in Borneo. So Green Tractor collectors have all got together to make sure that that farmer knows that when they recycle with them, the waste is being dealt with responsibly. They use the website and they find where their nearest collector is. We're nationwide. We've got collectors, from Scotland to the southwest and even in Northern Ireland. Farmer then it's their choice whoever they want to use. We don't want to hold a monopoly. They can choose whoever. Like, for example, alongside my work for Green Tractor, I also work for Agrii. They would work for them happily. A farmer can use us to recycle their plastic, but they can also use Grassroots or Solway. They click on the thing, they find the Green Tractor collector, and from there they can then use that service. And then it's pretty much, and that's it really. It's very easy for the farmer, and then they get their plastic recycled.
Well, it sounds very simple, Joe. And, can I ask the dreaded question, what is the cost?
So this is the thing. So as a scheme, we don't give out the cost of all the different collectors. They all do charge a different price. We don't want to control them and direct them. We have smaller businesses that are part of it, smaller recyclers and bigger ones. And they charge what they want to charge, essentially. But in pretty much, you've got things like silage wrap cost more. They cost more to recycle because, as I said, there's a lot more of a harder process to actually turn it back into a pellet. Things like your PP bags that make fertilizer and seed, and spray containers, which have got an end market, are much cheaper to recycle. I think as well, so taking Agrii as an example, and a lot of the other collectors offer similar services of, the larger farmers. If you're recycling significant quantities of, say, spray containers, will recycle the PP bags for free alongside that when you're doing that. But again, it's a difficult question. I get asked it a lot about fees, and it's very easy for the farmer to find out. They just contact the collectors, they can shop around and they can compare the prices. But as a ambassadorial role of myself, it's not me to go out and tell the farmer how much it costs.
And Joe, you just mentioned Agrii. Can you just clarify for us who is Agrii?
Agrii is a farm plastic recycling business based here in Lincolnshire. They are not related to Agrii.
And if you do visit the Green Tractor website, it's really clear to see where the recycling companies are. It's very helpful to those visiting the site, isn't it, Joe?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's very, very easy for the farmer to find this information. And this is a point that I address very quickly, is it is easy for the farmer to find it, and to, if they want to use Excel, they can quite easily compare the different prices and see which is the better one for them. We're not trying to hide that information from them, but it's, commercial sensitivity at play, really. So I think that's it, really.
And Amy, how are Agrii working with the Green Tractor scheme and helping your farmer customers?
Yeah, so when we first joined the Green Tractor scheme, we worked closely with Joe and his team to look at what could be a benefit for Agrii to join the scheme and for our customers more than anything else. So we managed to arrange for any Agrii customers wanting to recycle through the scheme that they can get a 5% discount with certain recycling specialists. There is details through your Agrii agronomist or anybody else as well on who those select specialists are, and how to claim that discount is really quite straightforward. The main reason we're doing this is obviously we don't want cost to be a barrier to being environmentally friendly and sustainable, and doing the best thing for the environment and for your business as well.
Agrii customers are able to claim a 5% discount when making a collection order with certain recycling specialists who are involved in the Green Tractor scheme network. When making an order, simply use the code AGRIE5, then quote your Agrii account number to claim the discount. What happens if I as a farmer don't do anything? I don't try to recycle my farm plastic. Just so that we're aware, what happens if I don't do that? What's the long-term consequence? Joe, what are your thoughts?
Well, from a very immediate cost that could occur, the Environment Agency, they do conduct investigations. They do look to see if farmers are dealing with their plastic and other waste responsibly. If a farmer is found to be burning or burying their waste, they will incur significant charges. There's then also, there's assurance schemes, and they normally say that you need to deal with your waste responsibly. So, if you're not dealing with it responsibly, whether that's landfilling or more ideally recycling, then you might not be able to get your assurances from, the likes of Leaf and Red Tractor. And then finally, I think, we're talking about long-term impacts. It's very in its infancy in terms of research, but, contamination of soil with microplastics, it will, quite obvious, it will have a detrimental impact to your yields. We're only in the early stages of looking at it because it's not been on people's minds as much, but now it is, and it is a pressing concern, and more research will come out to show that it is harmful for your farm and other farms around you. And then also as well with that burning, you are contaminating the air with, plastic. I said at the start of the podcast how fantastic it is, but it is made from crude oil, and that is good. That has got byproducts, and when you're burning it and you're contaminating the air, that will then have an impact on not only your own personal health, but the health of your farm.
And talking of health of our farm, Amy, we spend so much time talking about the health of our soils and creating habitats around our farms. Surely it makes good sense to recycle our plastic waste.
Absolutely. All we've ever tried to push is using resources as efficiently as possible, and that's becoming more and more important now. And as Joe's just said, plastic is made out of crude oil initially. So there's only a limited supply of these things, and hence why recycling and reusing those resources where we can is really important. So we're not overutilizing resources that are available to us, and just basically reusing them. It's kind of common sense in that way, keeping everything in a closed loop.
As we draw to an end of this podcast, Joe, could you just summarise how do growers and farmers find out more about this scheme?
So, as Amy has put, if you speak to your agronomist, so Agrii agronomist, that they can tell you more about Green Tractor, but it's as easy as searching for it on Google, and it will come up, how to recycle my farm plastic. Green Tractor appears, and you can read more about it. As well as that, we're appearing more and more in agricultural publications as time goes on, and we increase our awareness, through things like this podcast. They can find out more, they can learn where they need to recycle, and contact more Green Tractor collectors and recycle their farm plastic.
And Amy, as Sustainability Manager for Agrii, what top tips, what key message would you like listeners to take away from today's podcast?
I think sometimes we're culprits in this industry of looking at, there's somebody else in the world that's not doing it, so why should I do it? Why should I bother? We look particularly, for example, at deforestation in South America, and everybody says, why should I do anything when they're carrying on the way they are? The truth is, and as in history shows, somebody's got to take the lead and start somewhere. We are quite a developed country in the UK, so we naturally probably will be taking the lead. So there's no point in sitting back and waiting for things to become in policy and waiting for things to happen. Ultimately, we all want farms to be here for the next generation and everything else to be better, if not the same. So taking a step now will help for us to get there, in essence, and for everything to be as we want it to, if not better, for the future generations.
Well, thank you, Amy and Joe, for your great advice on how the Green Tractor scheme can help farm businesses recycle their farm plastic. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask the experts, email info@agrii.co.uk. See you next time.